Thank you, everyone. Chair, we are now live.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual community grant panel meeting today, the 26th of January 2021. I'm your chair, Councillor Jack Rowland, and I would like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. All participants here today are taking part remotely, and as well as being live streamed, the meeting is being recorded, so please bear this in mind throughout. And may I remind you to be careful with your language. May I also remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participants who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Please turn any telephone devices off or to silence. As this meeting is dependent on internet connection and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or power cuts, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we are not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. Please check the committee page on the website for details. Please make sure all phones are muted and microphones are muted when you are not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Keep points short and do not repeat points that have already been made, and do not interrupt. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Can you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you are present, please mute your microphone again. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you. So I'll start with you, Chair. Councillor Rowland.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Key. Councillor Loudon.
Present.
Councillor Parr.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Pook.
Present.
Thank you. I can confirm we're quorate today.
Thanks very much, Wendy. Agenda item 1 is public speaking, and I'm pleased to see that we have Dave Underwood here, who's going to be speaking on behalf of West Hill British Legion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much to the committee for giving consideration to our application. There has been a Royal British Legion Club in West Hill since 1927, and we've been on our current premises since about 1947, when it was built by returning members from the Second World War. It's a vital component of our village. It provides a social hub accessible to all members and guests, and membership is open to everyone, including junior membership, I'm pleased to say, but they have to be supervised by an adult when they attend. We have a range of clubs and societies that use our facilities regularly. And one of the things that has been a bugbear for a long time for those clubs, societies, our members, and indeed anybody who private hires for wait, etc., is our kitchen was dire. It was a small, domestic refitted kitchen and was only suitable for reheating things. I'm pleased to say that thanks primarily to a grant from the Veterans Covenant Fund, we have now been able to treble the size of that space, but we now have to equip it so that it is usable and so that we can actually prepare food on site. And that is the purpose of this grant application, indeed our own next investment, because we will be funding the majority of it ourselves. But it will mean that we are able to extend the range of facilities available to our members and to the wider community by being able to prepare and serve food on site. We have not been able to prepare the food on site before, and that, we hope, will result in us being able to perhaps open at lunchtimes during the weekdays and to offer food servings in the evenings where they don't clash with other activities of clubs and societies. Thank you very much for your consideration. Be happy to take any questions should they arise.
Okay. Any panel members or non-panel members have any questions to raise of Dave at the moment? No? Can't see any hands raised. So thank you, Dave. As you know, we will be considering the application under agenda item 8 on the agenda. So if you'd like to stay for the rest of the meeting, because there could well be questions that might crop up later on, I don't know. Thank you. Okay, if I can move on then to agenda item 2, which is minutes of the previous meeting. If anyone has any comment on the set of minutes from the 5th of October 2020, please do so by raising your electronic hand. If I see no hands raised, I would take this as an indication that you all agree the minutes of the previous meeting. Can't see any hands raised. So I'll take that as agreement then. So thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting are agreed then. Thank you. Agenda item 3, apologies. Wendy, do we have apologies?
No apologies received.
Sorry, did you say no apologies received?
Yeah, no apologies. I'm aware that Councillor Key isn't in the meeting, but I haven't had apologies from him, so yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's the only one.
Do we not have apologies from Councillor Miller?
Councillor, I've been informed Councillor Miller is no longer on this panel.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Wendy, if you could do a roll call, please.
Yes, so I'll start with you, Chair. So do you have any declarations?
None.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Yes, I'd like to make a personal declaration. I'm the West Hill ward member. I've seen the application. I use the British Legion Club, and yeah, I've put a supportive statement in there. So I'd like to declare a personal interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Loudon.
I think I ought to declare a couple of things in relation to the agenda item 13 on the current rules of the fund. One, I'm a member of Sidmouth Town Council. I'm elected councillor there. That may have a bearing on our debate. And I was the secretary of a limited company that sought to purchase our local pub. So that may impinge on our debate. So I just thought I'd declare both of those.
Are they both personal interests?
I presume so, yes. Yes, they must be. Yes, there was no pecuniary interest.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Parr.
Same as Councillor Bailey, basically, but for Collie Ford. I'm the ward member for Collie Valley, and I've used the hall and I've seen their application. Thank you.
Okay, that's a personal interest, yes?
Yes.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Pook.
Okay, thank you. Item 12, Beer Football Club. It's a personal interest, not pecuniary interest. I'm not actually a member of the club at the moment. And I did provide supporting statements in their application. And should there be any questions, I don't know if it's applicable, but I'll be quite happy to answer any if there are any questions during the actual debate. And I assume that I just don't speak in the debate otherwise. Is that correct, or can I speak in the debate?
Well, as it's a personal interest, you're permitted to speak in the debate.
Okay, thank you.
Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we move on then to agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are none. And agenda item 6, confidential exempt items. There are no confidential exempt items which officers recommend should be dealt with this way. So agenda item 7 is the money available for 2020-21. Jamie, over to you to introduce your report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is a report just stating how much money there is currently available for this financial year. Because at our last meeting, the panel decided to use £2,383 from this year's pot to help fund worthy applications from last year because of the delays. There is now £19,867 in the pot to give away this year, which ends in April, 1st of April. Up until now, we've always had 2 closing dates per financial year, which the main reason for that is because if projects arise in community buildings throughout the year, there is a relatively near deadline which they can apply to. If you look at all the applications that we've got in this time, to fund all of the projects would take nearly all of the money that there is left, and there wouldn't be a second closing date. I am aware of at least 2 now community buildings that have projects and were hoping to come in for the second funding round. So that's something to think about as we work through the agenda. It could be, for example, that you decide you wish to fund all the projects, in which case there wouldn't be a second funding round this financial year, but we could, for example, have an early deadline the following financial year, maybe in June, to spread them out a little bit more. Just something to bear in mind as we're going through the agenda. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Jamie. Are there any questions of Jamie at the moment? I notice Councillor Hayward, who's a non-panel member. I'm not sure if he has any questions at this stage.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I'm here as a councillor, I'm predominantly here with members' forbearance as the treasurer of Newton Popperford Playing Field Foundation, and we have an application in front of you, so I am here if there's any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Okay, I'll come back into the panel then. Are there any questions from the panel? Councillor Loudon.
Yeah, sorry, I'm unable to raise my electronic hand, so I don't know whether that's me or the system. But anyway, I forgot what I was going to ask now. Oh, sorry, I've been distracted by the hand, so forgive me. I forgot what I was going to say.
We'll come back to you if necessary then. Okay. Any other questions from panel members? No, I can't see any virtual hands being raised. Okay, so can we move on then to agenda item 8, which is the application from the West Hill British Legion. Over to you again, Jamie.
Thank you, Chair. As has already been outlined by Dave, West Hill British Legion Hall wants to fit out its new bigger kitchen. It has the room but not the equipment within it, which will enable hirers and others to prepare and cook food on the premises, which hasn't been possible before. It will make it more sustainable. There are other community buildings in West Hill. The project will mainly benefit British Legion members, but a wide variety of other community groups do use the hall regularly, and obviously it's available for private hire as well, weddings and birthdays and things like that. They do have a grant from the parish council, which members have always been quite keen to see in applications before, and they scored 21 out of 25, which is quite a high score for the project. And most of the marks that they lost were on the need for the hall, and that would be because there are other community buildings within West Hill. There is a really well-used village hall, but as outlined in the application, the village hall is quite large and serves a slightly different sector of the community. So back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Jamie. Open up to questions then. Jess. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. So sorry, I did try to raise my hand, but it doesn't seem to be available. I just wanted to pick up, oh, I should probably mention that I am a West Hill Parish Councillor as well. But I just wanted to pick up on the scoring about whether there's a need for the building in the community and the fact that there's a village hall. Well, the village hall was very much built as a kind of joint operation with the school and formerly the playing field. So the actual building is quite, although it's a good, really good building, it's very heavily used by the school, which actually restricts its availability to other users. So downstairs, it's used every day for lunches and things like assemblies in normal times. And there's also a preschool. So there's actually quite, and there's upstairs rooms, but there's no lift or anything. So actually, given the size of West Hill, with I think around 850 houses, and given the fact that the village hall has, commitments really in conjunction with the school, I think that 2 is maybe just doesn't quite reflect that, the kind of having that, the knowledge that actually the reality of availability of community space within the community is quite limited. And so I think that that it is a really usable, important space for people and for community groups, and I think that it's the group concerned has a very much a can-do attitude, and they've done a lot of work. It's improved with the car parking stuff in recent years, and I just wanted to clarify that really around the village hall. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bailey. While you've been speaking, I noticed Councillor David Key has joined us. Welcome, Councillor Key.
Yes.
Just to let you know, we're on agenda item 8.
Yes, I guess that, yes.
Can we just go back to cover, as you've now joined the meeting, can we cover whether you have any declarations of interest for Wendy's benefit?
No, none whatsoever on any of them.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad you've joined us as well. Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Councillor Bailey, for the additional information. Can I invite any members of the panel to ask any questions or?
I'm sorry, he's at a meeting at the moment. He's on a Zoom meeting.
Sorry, I'm not sure who that was. Jeff, Councillor Pook.
Yeah, we see these sorts of applications coming through all the time. And I think it's so important that we do encourage and enable the sort of development of these village facilities, because, especially as people are doing more and more locally, and legislation is so much more important. So it takes such a bigger toll on things that you can't do if your kitchens don't comply and things like that. But overall, I think, it's important that we do have good village facilities, because if there aren't good village facilities, people end up having to travel further, they're going further, the villages and communities start to lose their cohesion. So anything that improves village facilities, I think, providing it's a qualifying application, should be supported. So I'm more than happy to support this one.
I'll take that as a proposal to accept then, Councillor Pook. Yeah.
Yes.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Loudon, thank you for seconding. Any other panel members wish to comment at the moment? Councillor Key, I thought I saw a virtual something that came up. It looked like a thumbs up, but I wasn't sure.
Yes, I did want to actually say, yes, I mean, I was a little bit concerned on the low marking on the second question. I mean, it's quite a vibrant sort of area sort of thing, and I was concerned on that. This is why I'm a little bit dubious as to whether we should actually allocate the full amount on there. I mean, my suggestion, I mean, I know it's been proposed and put forward, but my suggestion would have been to 4,000 rather than the 5, because of that very low mark on the second question. But anyway, it seems as though it's been proposed and seconded. I mean, I've got a bit of experience on this committee because I've been on it for 21 years. So I know exactly what goes on, but that did concern me a little bit that, you know, although the hall is needed, the actual works with regard of it, you know, does sort of concern me a little bit.
Thank you, Councillor Key. Councillor Bailey.
Sorry, I'm not quite sure which low mark Councillor Key is referring to.
It's the second one on the list. The first one is for the need of the hall, right? The second one, and it's only got 2 marks on it, 2 points.
Sorry, the one that I'm looking.
It's got 4.
I'm looking
It's
at
got
has
4
4.
against.
It's
Yeah,
got
Well, the one
four.
that the list that I had come through on the thing, it only had 2 on with a total of 21 points.
No, the first one's got 2, and I
Oh,
explained.
sorry. Yes, I mean the first one. The
Yeah,
need,
so I don't know
yes.
know whether Councillor Key, you heard me talking about that scoring and how I felt that I'm not sure you were in the meeting, but when I was talking about how I felt that that scoring was a little bit well, I shouldn't say unfair, but I don't think it recognises the fact that actually within West Hill there's actually quite a limited availability to the village hall because it's very much used in conjunction with the school. So at lunch times every day that the village hall, it can't be used by anybody else, and
Yes.
the preschool operates 5 days a week out of there on the ground floor. So it's actually for ground level space and the size of West Hill, there was very little community access to community space. So although technically there is another village hall, I think that the 2 maybe doesn't reflect the reality of available community space.
All right. Yes. Okay. Accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Okay, it's been put forward, proposed and seconded for the full £5,000 that's been requested. Can I now ask that panel members now vote, please? So over to you, Wendy.
Okay, so Chair, I've just been testing the raising electronic blue hands. I don't know if you've noticed there's an extra member of our committee called Virtual DSO, which is me coming in on an iPad. There appears to be a problem this morning, so I think we'll have to go back to a good old-fashioned method. Members can either physically raise their hands so I can see you on screen, or we can do a recorded vote where I call out your name. Your choice, Chair.
I think because the relatively small number of people that we have on the panel, I think we can all see just by doing a raising of hands, real hands.
Okay, so members, if you could physically, back to old school, raise up your hand if you're in agreement with the proposal, please. So I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. Thank you. For those who are against on the panel, could you please raise your hand?
I'm for it.
Oh, you are? I just didn't see your physical hand up, David.
No, I've been trying to get it up.
Well, moving swiftly on, Chair, I think we'll call that as a unanimous result. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay. Are you now leaving us then, Dave? Okay, thank you very much for attending this morning. Thank you.
Yes, that's okay, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can we move on then to agenda item 9, which is the application for Exton Village Hall. Over to you, Jamie.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is the only community building within Exton, although there's halls in neighbouring villages such as Limpston and Woodbury. There's a couple of community buildings in Woodbury, but it is the only one within Exton. Under normal circumstances, outside of coronavirus, it's used very regularly, and the users themselves have requested an audio and sound system with a hearing loop. So that feedback has actually come from people that use the hall as something that they need. So it will make the hall be more sustainable and give users a better experience and allow more users to access all the facilities of the hall. They have all the other funding in place. It's all coming from the hall itself. There isn't a contribution from the Parish Council. and their work is really well planned, and they have three really good quotes. They're asking for £2,567.76. And again, they scored 21. The need for the proposed works, I scored that slight. This is just a guide for members. You can disagree as much as you like. But the need for proposed works, I marked down a little bit, because comparing it to other projects that come forward, the hall could keep going without this work happening. It just wouldn't be as good an experience for users, and it wouldn't be as sustainable. Back to you, Chair.
Thanks, Jamie. I'll open it up to the panel then, if anybody has any questions or comments. Councillor Loudon.
I don't know the village hall, but I think the rationale behind their request for the works seems to me to be a good request, because I think we have to more and more make sure that places like community places like this are as accessible as possible to as many people. And if for the sake of, what was it, 7,000 or whatever it was, yes, nearly £8,000 in total, that allows greater accessibility to everybody in the community, then I would support that.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the proposal? Thank you, Councillor Bailey. If there are no other questions, can we go straight to a vote then? Over to you, Wendy.
Okay, so members of the panel, if you could physically raise your hand up so I can see it on camera, please, if you are in support. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Councillor Key, are you raising a hand in support of that?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Great, thank you. So that's carried unanimously, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, if we can move on then to agenda item 10, which is the application for Colleton Memorial Hall. Over to you again, Jamie.
Thanks very much. Yes, Colliford Memorial Hall. There's several community buildings in Colleton, but this one is the only one in Colliford itself. Under normal circumstances outside of coronavirus, it is in use constantly. I've tried to book it myself, and it's just booked quite a lot of the time. The floor is failing on a regular basis. They've tried to do emergency repairs as often as possible, but it's at a stage now where they just can't do that anymore. So they're looking to replace the whole floor. They've got all the other funding in place. There is no contribution from the parish council. The repairs are well planned. They've got a significant amount of money in reserve, but they are planning other projects to use their significant amount of funding that they have in reserve. And coronavirus is also having a financial impact on their reserves. They're still having to pay out, even though they're not getting much income at the moment. So their reserves will be depleted. So I didn't feel like that was something to particularly worry about. They are asking for a contribution of £4,611.68 from the panel. And they gained a score from myself of 20. The most lacking area I thought was local support, because it might just be due to the nature of the project. Because it's a floor, people don't know that it's failing. The users don't know that that's happening, but obviously if the floor had to be taken out, they would all definitely know that there was a need for that project. So back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Jamie. My apologies for my faux pas. I think when I introduced that, I might have actually said Colleton Memorial Hall. I do beg your pardon. It should be Colliford Memorial Hall. I won't blame what was shown on the script, but it is correct on the agenda. So can we open that up to panel members, please? I think Councillor Parr might be the first one to raise your hand. You're on mute.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's very important to make that correction you made, because Colliford is definitely a separate community, and I think it's actually separated because it's so difficult to get to Collerton unless by car. And people simply, to trek to Collerton to use one of those halls just wouldn't be on. So it's vitally important, this hall. And it's extremely well used. And it's the only hall in Colliford. I'm not happy with the points, Jamie, that you awarded for the support, because, no, sorry, I'm losing my place here. It's to what extent the reason, I can't find my place on here, but you said that nobody's asked for the floor to be repaired, basically. I think, Jamie, I can't find that on the form. Is it the community support point is 2?
Yes, that sort of comes out of how much the community have requested this project to happen, and how much the project has been developed with the community. And I didn't get any evidence of that, which I sort of assumed would be because of the nature of the project. Maybe they don't know that the floor is failing. It's something that I perhaps wouldn't expect users to know.
Exactly. And that is why I think that scoring is unfair, actually, because clearly people have said to the hall committee, there's a loose floorboard, or somebody noticed some fault with the floor, and they have rectified it and been efficient in doing that. So I really think it's, as I say, it's unfair to give them a low point for that, because if it's been mended, then users aren't going to be demanding work done to the floor. But clearly it was brought to their attention, which is why they've mended it, but they've got to the point now where they can't carry on doing it in that same way. As to the lack of support from the parish council, I don't know why they didn't approach the parish council. They say that they thought the parish council had other things to fund, but I will go back to them and tell them that really they should always go to the parish council for support. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Parr. Councillor Bailey, I think you might have had your hand up next.
Thank you very much. Yes, this looks like a very good application to me, and I'm certainly supportive of it. So I don't know if you want to have that as a proposal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Key, were you seconding Councillor Bailey? You're on mute at the moment. Councillor Key, you're still on mute?
Sorry about that. I don't know what's happening with my iPad today. But yes, I'm more than happy to actually second that, because I've been to several functions at wedding anniversaries, birthdays and that sort of thing there. And it is a lovely hall. It's got a nice big car park as well, which is useful. And yes, I mean, I think it does need, the support that we can actually give it. And so I'm more than happy to actually second Councillor Bailey's proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Key. Thank you for the comments that have come through so far. One thing I would add in, that this is a very well used hall, and I know there's just in the last few months, the doctor's surgery in Seaton actually used the Memorial Hall in Colliford to carry out the flu vaccines. So it's got a wider usage just apart from the local village as well. So it is very well used and provides a tremendous asset. So It's now been moved and seconded anyway, so can we go to a vote on this? Over to you, Wendy.
Okay, Chair. So members of the panel, if you could physically wave your hand at me, please, if you are in support of the proposal. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Chair. So that is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. So we can move now on to agenda item 11, which is the application from Newton Poppleford Pavilion. Again, over to you, Jamie.
Very much, Chair. Yes, Newton Poppleford Pavilion. There's a few other community buildings in the near vicinity, but the pavilion's still well used, and from talks with Councillor Hayward is meeting a certain need that maybe the other community buildings don't need. Under normal circumstances, it's really well used. Hirers and potential hirers have complained about the windows, the doors, and the other woodwork. I actually went down to see the hall myself to see which elements of the project could potentially be funded from the Community Buildings Fund. And yes, the windows, the door, and the other woodwork is in state, and some of it is wrong. And the project would make the hall more energy efficient and more secure and more sustainable. It would attract more hirers to the hall, because at the moment it looks a bit bedraggled, and the project would bring it up to standard really, as well, making it secure and more energy efficient. They've got all the other funding in place, which includes a grant from Devon County Council. Have 3 quotes from the work is very well planned. They scored 21. The only one I slightly marked them down on here is the need for the hall, because there are several other community buildings within Newton Poppleford. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Jamie. Open it up to the panel then. Or is there anything you wish to add, non-panel member, to Councillor Hayward, the opportunity if you wish to say anything at this stage?
Thank you, Chair. Members. No, I mean, Jamie's pretty much covered it. There are essentially there's 4 community venues in Newton Poppleford. One is ostensibly a church hall, which is predominantly for St Luke's parishioners and their functions. There's the village hall, which is a sort of quasi-medieval building off the high street, which is the sort of focus for most of the amateur dramatics and such like, because it has a working stage and a balcony. And then there's Hertford Hall. Hertford Hall is the smallest of the 4. And for anyone who knows Newton Poppleford, actually getting to Hertford on foot is almost impossible because of the A3052 and there's no walkway. And Hertford Hall itself does suffer from a lack of parking. So Hertford Hall is predominantly for the parishioners of Hertford. The Newton Poppleford Pavilion is linked to the playing field, and that is a charitable foundation founded in 1951, which I'm currently going through all the paperwork for at the moment. And so that provides sporting facilities, leisure facilities, recreation facilities, and the actual charity, even if you don't use the building, the playing fields are open to all as per the charity's constitution and terms of reference. So yes, the hall has actually a long pedigree of East Devon District Council involvement. It was designed by former East Devon District Councillor David Atkins. It was built by former Councillor Graham Brown and his building company. And the windows that are in situ are actually the original windows from that time, and they have rotted out. We had a spate of vandalism in Newton Poppleford, and I believe Tipton suffered at the same time. Actually, Tipton suffered a lot worse than we did, their community facilities. And windows were smashed and the door was gemmed, and it just caused a lot of damage that our handyman attempted to fix. But the windows really, they leak, they're not energy efficient, and the hall is cold and miserable. And this will go a long way to actually making it a more viable venue. Its most recent use, sadly curtailed by COVID, was as the host for the lunch club. So we have a great many elderly residents who pile into there to get their weekly lunch. And even with the heating on full blast, the heat just goes straight out of the windows and the doors. So this will go a long way to help Newton Pop's climate change aspirations. and also save money which we can plough back into the charity. Thank you, Chair, members.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Councillor Key, I saw your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, this is a minimal amount, I think, that what they're wanting. And it is a very sort of, go ahead, vibrant sort of parish. I mean, I think all village halls at the moment are taking a bit of a hammering in raising funds. So I'm more than happy to sort of put forward that this is going. I have been to this hall in the past, and it's unfortunate that it has sort of had the damage done to it, but if we can actually help through with this to put it back into good working use again, then I'm more than happy to put forward the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Key. Councillor Pook.
Yeah, on that basis, I'm happy to second it, because going back to my first point, we've got to retain these village facilities, and it's sort of like the sort of thing, if you see something in bad condition, it becomes a target for vandalism, it gets less use, and it'll just slowly go out, and before long it'll get to a stage and it'll be unusable and unviable to bring back. So I think we have to keep these things in operation. Just going back to one of Jamie's very early points about, we are using sort of, if this lot got approved, a 95 or a large percentage of the funding. Well, I appreciate that, but we've got to. Everyone knows about these funds come forward, and it's it's these that come forward at this time. If we end up using it in the first, in the first round of spending, then maybe it becomes more practical to have a single round of spending every year. I don't think we should be judging, holding back on certain projects in the hope that something else, or possibility something else might come forward. So if something is viable and there's a reason for it, there's a community need for it, and it's come forward at the right time, I think we should be funding it, and I'll support this one.
Thank you, Councillor Pook. Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pook has actually reminded me what it was I was going to say way back when, which was probably the better place for me to have said it. I understand what Councillor Pook says about maybe we ought to just have one round. I think at the moment, the very fact that we advertise there are 2 rounds, I think it would be wrong for us to change that at this point. I think certainly in this financial year, we should allow 2 rounds to go forward. I absolutely get the point that Councillor Pook makes about, looks as if we agree to all that is in front of us today, we've more or less blown the budget for this year. And I understand that, and that gives me a slight anxiety. And I was thinking, before I came into the meeting, one of the thoughts I had was, well, maybe we sort of top slice each one of the ones in front of us by, I don't know, 5%, 10%, whatever, just to sort of try and give us a little bit of a bigger cushion towards the end of the financial year. But obviously I haven't said that before now, and it would be wrong to say it at this point. As someone who in the past has looked to access council grant funding for local organisation, I found it incredibly difficult when you only have one window in a year, particularly if you are, if you miss it or you fail at that particular window, you've then got another 12 months to go around. And that does concern me. So I do quite like the idea that we have a couple of shots at it for organisations, because timing might not be everything at that one point for the organisation. So I think it's a discussion worth having at some point, and maybe Chair, it might come under item 13. I don't know. But I thought, given Councillor Pook had raised that, I felt the need to sort of put my 2 pence worth in. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Loudon. Councillor Key.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Councillor Loudon there, because in actual fact, as I said, I've been on the committee now for 21 years, and we've always had two bites of the cherry, if you see what I mean, because I mean, everybody doesn't come up with the problems all at the same time, and I mean, they are sort of spread over a time of year, and if you do, like Councillor Loudon said, you miss one, you've got the chance of another. So I think it's imperative that we stick to two allocations in the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Key. I think we can probably include that particular point in under Agenda 13 when we get to that point. If we can come back specifically to the application from Newton Poppleford Pavilion, has been moved and seconded. I can say I'm really pleased to see as well that 2,500 came from the parish council and £1,500 from Devon County Council Locality Fund as well. So I think that's really pleasing to see as well. So unless there are any other comments, I can't see any of their hands being raised at the moment. Can we now go to a vote then, Wendy? Over to you.
Okay, Chair. So members of the panel, if you could physically wave at me if you are in support of the proposal, please. I see 6 hands, Chair, so that is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Thank
Wendy.
you, members.
Okay.
Have a lovely day.
Bye-bye, Councillor Haynes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, we now move on to agenda item 12, which is the application from Beer Football Club. Again, over to you, Jamie.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, the Beer Albion Football Club house. It's well used by the football club, occasionally used by other groups, and is also available for private hire. There is another building, a community building within Beer, the Mariners Hall, but again, I know from experience that this is quite often very well booked up in normal, outside of coronavirus times. The project is to expand the football club house facilities by making a viewing area. This would mainly be used by football club spectators, but also occasionally by others. Although there's a lot of letters of support that I received in support of the wider project, so they have a wider project which was about creating things like a cellar and a new bar area and just expanding the rest of their facilities. But unfortunately, we couldn't consider the wider project as a whole because work had already started on the wider project, so I had to go back to them and say, which element of your project have you not started yet? We can look to fund that. So we can't really consider the wider project itself, just the viewing area part of that wider project. The viewing area, I felt, compared to other projects that we've seen over the years, would be of quite limited benefit. And also it would be mainly to benefit the football club. So the wider community benefit, I felt, would be quite significantly lower than other projects that we've seen. Although obviously I saw in the evidence that they sent through that there is a hell of a lot of support for the football club, and they do have a large amount of members, and all the local community organisations within Beer do support the football club themselves. Something that is probably worth mentioning is that the accepted quote that they would like to continue the work with would include free labour, which I thought was really good and something that we don't often see on applications. The reason that I've scored it lower than the other projects, and it's got a total score of 15, is because of that limited community benefit, and it's a viewing area, so it's not. I didn't feel it was of as much benefit as other projects we've funded, such as the new floor or the new windows and doors, or the new kitchen. Presumably, the hall the clubhouse could function perfectly well. Without a viewing area, although obviously it is something that football club members have asked for. Over to you.
Thanks, Jamie. Open it out to panel members then. Councillor Pook.
Thank you. I've read the report and I've seen going through Jamie's comments, and I don't really disagree with in a way, but I do in others. So going to the community building, yes, we have other community buildings in Beer. This is the only one with any outside space. So any sporting type events we have, like in Regatta, when they have Regatta Sports up there, they have other events up there, and they need to have a lot of people and outside space, which is going to become even more important, as we know. This is the only real space for it, and it's well used, as I say, from a charity point of view and from the basic community. The main point of this is the low scoring on, and I totally take what Jamie means, but it's almost like the football clubs being persecuted for actually putting a lot of work in and starting something based on all the other funding which they've managed to achieve, and then they can't actually get the complete. They've had to sort of divert funding from what was going to be put onto the viewing area into the kitchen area. Most of this area, the work that you'll have seen starting, it's all been done by voluntary labour. So it's very much a voluntary supported and community supported project. And the improvements, the overall improvements, which I accept included works which aren't included in this application, will make this a venue which can be really used by the community for outside and for wider use and sporting use, which is another thing we're supporting. And so, I just wanted to sort of get that across. I know it's Jamie's explained it in the documents, but I just wanted to put a bit more meat on the bone just there. The parish council, I'm a bit confused on that because I thought we had agreed, but perhaps that hadn't come in time for this application, but I will chase that up because I should know that myself. Anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions, but it's the slow score, I think, is because the parent of the football club has taken initiative and done all the sort of the legwork themselves to get things moving. So if the season does open up, they've got something to use this year, because they just drastically needed better internal facilities. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Pook. Councillor Key, you had your hand up first.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether, no, I don't have to declare an interest. I played against Beer football dozens and dozens of times when in my younger days. What concerned me was this very low score of only 15 points there. I mean, I'm all for sort of helping them with sort of like facilities, kitchen facilities, toilet facilities, that type of thing. But I think when it comes to sort of outside facilities, I think that is an extra thing that is, to me, is unnecessary when somebody else could come along and want some money for, shall we say, toilets or kitchen or something like that. And really knowing, sort of having read the whole report on that, I mean, I would like to actually put forward that this amount was reduced to 3,500 rather than the 4,600. It seems a heck of a lot of money when, some of it, and I mean, the football season is only, I don't know how long it's going to do before we're going to get back to actually playing again. But I mean, it's a seasonal thing, so it only gets used other times, sort of when there's the sports. Well, that's not sort of probably every week or so. And so, I mean, I'm more than happy to support it to a degree, but with an allocation of 15 points, I think 3,500 would be the amount that I would like to put forward as a proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Key. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Councillor Pook a question, please? And that's it. It's a viewing area. Is it a covered viewing area? Just can't quite picture, or is it just a ground floor viewing, a slightly raised viewing area?
It'll it'll be a raised viewing area. It won't be covered, or certainly not fully covered. It'll have the opportunity for putting temporary covers over. But what they're doing is utilising the space above the existing changing rooms to actually have this elevated area, because the club is already set, the actual clubhouse, because the topography is already set down a bit, and therefore to get up high and get any decent viewing, you will be getting up there. And as I say, it's not a new building. It's taking the existing changing area and making it into a flat roof with all the necessary guarding, etc. Does that answer your question, Jess?
Yes, it does. I mean, I'm generally very supportive of it. I think, whether it's the full amount or a slightly reduced amount, but I think I'd like to feel that we can support it. I don't know what any other members feel about the different amounts.
Councillor Loudon, did I see your hand raised?
You did, Chair. Thank you. I was very taken by Councillor Pook's comments about the voluntary involvement and how the club has managed to garner a great deal of effort through voluntary use. But there is a but, and I thought I was going to concur with Councillor Key up until the very last point that he made. I mean, I was looking at this, and if I'm honest, if I have to rank this out of all the ones we have in front of us, I would rank it 5 out of 5. You know, the lowest one out of all of them, sadly. And I do think, if I'm looking at this compared to the other applications we've seen today, this feels, and forgive me, this is a very sloppy language, but it feels a bit more nice to have rather than necessary. All the others I felt were necessary in order to keep things going. And that's not to say I disagree with what they're wanting to do. Please don't misunderstand that. But equally, given that we still have another round to go, given we know potentially there may be another couple of organisations looking to bid, I'm concerned, and this, I'm afraid, Chair, was what I was going to talk about right at the very beginning of the meeting. I was very concerned that whether or not this was the right way to spend our money at this point. I don't disagree with it being a right use of money, and I perhaps differ to Councillor Bailey. I differ to Councillor Key in my thought, which is I would say, and I don't know whether this is doable. Can we put this on hold and put it into the pot for the next round, which Jamie has talked about potentially coming in the next couple of months? And then comparing, contrasting at that point. But, you know, I am sympathetic, I am, but is the point.
Thanks, Councillor Loudon. Councillor Pook, I think you wanted to come back.
Yes, it's just on this point of nice to have and need to have, and it's down to the bureaucracy of needing to have projects which haven't been started. And as I said earlier on, this project is an all-encompassing project. It needed to have the new bar and kitchen facilities, especially for the kitchen, so it can serve directly to the outside, the bank people coming in. It needs to have these from a health and safety. Well, not there wasn't contravening health and safety, but to improve health and safety. And the whole project was conceived as one, but because the actual members, got out and dug the holes and put the concrete in, and it's only about 300 metres from me. I often cycle past it and I see the guys, and I know them all well, and I see them digging away in all sorts of weathers, because they actually took the initiative and actually dug it out. They got other grants from South West Water, etc., to help, and they got a very sort of amenable landlord as well, allowing them to go ahead and do things, having got all the planning, etc. They're being penalised because they've actually gone ahead and done something. If you'd seen a project which came forward kitchen facilities, you'd have scored it on exactly the same basis as the others. And this is a facility which gives the community inside and, most importantly, outside sporting space. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Key.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I mean, this is the whole point with these things, is you do not start the renovations or the improvements until it has been decided, because this then gives a complete false impression. No other organisation that I can remember has ever started anything, because if it had been, it would have been thrown out. So, I mean, I think, you know, through them starting, okay, fine, if they wanted to start, but you don't do that sort of thing. Any grant, doesn't matter what it is. I mean, we've applied in our parish for Viridor credits and that, but you are told that you must not start anything until the grant is agreed. So I'm awfully sorry that to sort of say that if they've started it, that's really tough. But I still think that they can be allocated something, which I proposed previously. Thank you.
Okay. Going back to Councillor Pook, I think you originally proposed acceptance of the full 4,633, didn't you, Councillor Pook? Did you formally move that?
I didn't propose to start off because I thought, because of my interest, I'd let other members make a proposal. So I'm quite happy. I haven't knowingly made that proposal. So if Councillor Key wants to make his proposal, I'm sort of quite happy. I think it's from an interest point of view, it's probably best if I sit to one side slightly. I'll still vote, but I won't propose.
Noted. Okay, can I come back to you then, Councillor Key? Oh, sorry, Councillor Parr first.
Yes, I have a lot of support for what Councillor Keyes said. Yes, it's low scoring. Yes, it's not essential. It's not in it's not in the building, but there's huge community involvement. I mean, they're getting in there, they're shoveling away. I do think that they deserve some support, and I would like to second what Councillor Key proposed, which is a slightly reduced amount.
Okay, can I just come back to Councillor Key to be clear about the amount you proposed?
Yes, 3,500.
Okay, Councillor Parr, are you seconding that proposal? Okay. I can't see anybody else wanting to make any further comments. So, Councillor Loudon.
It's probably a bit forlorn what I was looking to propose. I did suggest, Chair, that perhaps we try and put this on hold and consider it in the next round. But I'm looking at the screen and I think I'm probably in a minority of one here, in which case I will keep stum.
Thanks, Councillor Loudon. I think because we've had a move and a seconder, if we can take a vote first on the proposal from Councillor Key, and then see how that vote goes first, and then we can always come back to your point and perhaps cover it in the next agenda item. So, Wendy, can I come to you, please, to take the vote?
Okay, Chair. So, members of the panel, you're voting on a reduced proposal of £3,500. Could you please wave your hand at me at the screen if you are in agreement with that proposal? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is carried unanimously, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I think that was a very useful debate on that one, so thank you, panel. We can now move on then to the next agenda item, which is to consider the current rules of the fund. Over to you, Jamie.
Thank you very much, Chair. So after our last community grants panel meeting, several of members of the panel said that they wanted to explore the rule that community buildings in town council areas currently aren't eligible, which has always been a rule of the fund. It's been discussed and reconfirmed by members over the years. So yeah, now over to you to discuss it really. There are several factors to think about while you're discussing it. There is currently only £22,250 a year in the Community Buildings Fund, which is nearly always given out every year. As we've seen this morning, we've already nearly given it all out in one funding round essentially. If community buildings in town council areas were permitted to apply, there's a lot more of them. So I would recommend that a much larger amount of funding would need to be available if we were to expand that rule, and just let any community building within East Devon apply. In current coronavirus times, a lot of community buildings are also struggling at the moment, so it may be that we would get more applications because of that, for that reason also. Throwing a figure out there, I would maybe recommend that something equating to about £100,000 would need to be made available. Having had a few discussions with community buildings in towns to try and help them with other sources of funding, they're looking for money as well. Something else to think about is town councils versus parish councils. So town councils receive a higher precept than parish councils and quite often have grants available for their local communities, including maybe grants for community buildings. And something that's always been decided by councillors up until now is that town councils should be expected to help fund community buildings in their areas, whereas parish councils can't really do the same with their limited precept. Sustainability. This one's a bit more tricky. So community buildings in rural areas and villages may have less users and less income, or it may be that community buildings in towns, because there's so many of them, they have less users and less income. It's just something to be debated really. And some town council areas include villages. Ottery St Mary Town Council also includes Alphington and Tipston St John, and Sidmouth Town Council includes Sidbury and Sidford. Something that you might want to think about is opening up the fund to those community buildings rather than all town council community buildings. Again, I would recommend that if that was to happen, a larger amount of money would need to be made available. So I don't know if you want to.
Sorry, Jamie, I think you've muted yourself.
Hello, sorry, did you hear what I just said?
We didn't quite hear the closing comments.
Oh, I think I got to the point where I said, do you want to discuss that point first before we move on to discussing about community pubs? And yeah, over to you.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Jamie, for producing the report. And I think it's a well worth debate to have at the moment. So, Councillor Key, I saw that your hand was raised first.
Yes, I mean, you know, what Jeremy has said, in actual fact, I mean, Jamie has said is very, very interesting. And I think, you know, really, to be quite honest, I'd be more than happy to sort of agree with what Jamie has said in it. I mean, it would be nice if we could increase the initial amount of what it goes forward, because then we could help an awful lot more cases. But that's to be discussed. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Key. I can see we've had another councillor join us, so from outside of the panel. So welcome, Cathy McCaughlan.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry I'm so late, but I had things to do this morning, but I wanted to come and see what was happening. Is that all right?
That's fine. We're actually at the very last item of the agenda.
Oh, how sad. I'll watch it on YouTube.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Pook.
I think this discussion, this paper here, should just be the very start of it, because this is a much bigger issue than something that just this panel can really discuss, and it's got all sorts of philosophical things about it, how much the council should be supporting the communities, you know, and especially when you've got some communities have got council-owned properties and some communities haven't got, and they're doing it all themselves. As I've already said, I think it's beholden upon us to actually support the communities, and especially the smaller rural communities who have, you know, much lower funding support than the towns and parishes. But I also appreciate that, you know, some community building, we don't need to have 5-star buildings in every single community. We can't afford to. So I would like to say, and I hate the thought of suggesting think tanks and things like that, or forums and things, but I really do think that fundamentally we need to decide as a council, do we want to support communities to have their facilities so they can actually operate as, yeah, and operate in sort of, you know, good environments in their vicinities. And if we're going to do that, how, you know, what are the markers? How do we do it? And we almost need to have understand what buildings we've got and the sort of costs we're going to, because, you know, I'm sure Jamie hasn't just picked 100,000 out of the air, but I don't know where 22,000 came from. But these days, £22,000 is such, you know, it's just a relatively minuscule amount. So I would like to, I don't know if it's possible to propose that we actually do a much more detailed study on this. We can continue this, you know, this like 2 stages, what we can do this year, and probably going into, well, the budget's already set for next year, so we're already there. And then have maybe the 2022 year have a different regime. But I think it's more than just this small panel sort of discussing how we go forward. I think we need to have a better understanding of what the situation is, what we're trying to achieve, the philosophy of the council, etc.
Thanks, Councillor Pook. Just before I bring Councillor Loudon in, I must admit I totally concur that I think this needs to be a much wider debate than outside of this panel on this issue. For 2 aspects. One is it's a complete policy change, and also because of the potential much bigger amount we may need on this. And as you rightly said, the budget for this coming financial year has virtually been approved anyway. So we will be talking about a subsequent financial year impact if we were to do this. And I'm well aware already of the impact on the medium-term financial plan that's coming down the road. So there is a number of pressures on the budget coming into the future. So over to you, Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I agree with the thrust of what Councillor Pook has just said. One of the things when I was reading the report that I thought was, do we have an understanding of what's out there in terms of assets that communities use? And Councillor Pook has touched on that, and I think that's a very sensible idea of us trying to understand the broader picture that is out there. So that's the first thing. Yes, I think there needs to be a greater debate about what it is we're trying to achieve, who we're trying to achieve it for, and with what. Now, I like Councillor Pook. I shudder a bit when we talk about, do we need to create another TAF, a think tank, blah, blah, blah. Surely we could undertake the review that is necessary, the debate that is necessary through this panel, and we then use this as the steering group, as it were, which then other councillors come in and join in, and then presumably it's a report, to Cabinet, something like that, in the first instance. I think it is quite refreshing, isn't it? Because I think this panel, the direction that this panel tries to go in is probably cross-party in its objectives. Our view collectively is about wanting to support communities, their organisations, their residents, and their buildings in the broadest sense. So that is something that we should be able to build for consensus, I would hope. And heaven knows, you know, at the moment we probably need that more debate. Sorry. Do you want me to go on mute because I've got builders in and see whether someone else wants? Oh, see if someone else No, they've stopped. If it goes on, I'll mute again. Sorry. I was going to look at the funding next, and we've got what, 22k here. Well, I was in a meeting last night at Sidmouth Town Council, where I'm a member, and we talked there about divvying up 20k. I'm going to mute.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. You did very well, actually, to talk around the building work that was going on. Are there any other members that wish to take part in this at the moment? Councillor Parr. I'll come back to Councillor Pook afterwards.
Only to ask a question of Jamie. In your point about the villages that come within town council areas, are you saying that they can't currently apply to this fund?
No, they can't. Any community building in a town council area, which would include Sidford and Sidbury and Tipton, cannot apply currently.
That seems so they apply to the town, do they?
The thinking of the panel previously and councillors previously was that town councils have quite a more significant precept, so they should be expected to support all the community buildings in their town council area. So they were expecting Ottery St Mary Town Council, for example, to support any community buildings in John or Alphington. It is just the fund at the moment. The rules are that only parish council based community buildings can apply.
Okay, Councillor Parr, have you got a... Okay, thank you. I'm going to take Councillor Pook, Councillor Loudon again, and then Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I like Councillor Loudon's idea that we keep it, maybe use this as a working committee rather than have some dreaded think tank or something, keep it nice and tight. But we are going to need data, and I'm just wondering how much resource Jamie's got, because effectively we're going to be wanting to get some information from all the different parishes. This question now about parishes which are related to towns and aren't, we need to get all the information in front of us. So it's a big lump of work, and I think it's going to probably sit on Jamie's shoulders and less to somebody else. And just wonder what resource she's got to do that.
She seems to have pixelated a little bit at that very point. I don't know if that's a reaction to the proposed workload, or Jamie, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I've currently, quite a lot of last year, I was seconded off my actual job to work on the council's coronavirus community support. That has now sort of tailed off quite significantly, but I am playing catch up with everything that I've had to put on the back burner for a while. Obviously, if it's members' priority, then there are other things that can sort of drop off my work schedule. But yeah, a discussion would need to be had about what is my priority. There is an organisation called Devon Communities Together who run a website called Devon Village Halls, which could give me information on a number of village halls within East Devon, and I could work with them on the project as well. I'm sure they'd be happy to do that if it meant that more community buildings might be able to be funded. But yeah, it would be quite a significant piece of work. Also rely on town and parish councils as well, because we would be asking them and East Devon District Council members for the information.
Thanks, Jamie. Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and get in quick before things go awry this end again. On the last point, I wonder whether the starting point is to look at the timetable that we would need to operate to in order to hit any recommendations, particularly in light of funding for the 22-23 financial year, and to work backwards. And if that was, and within that, whether or not that could mean we could delay slightly the start of our discussions to sort of allow Jamie to spend a bit more time playing catch up as she is trying to do without overloading her. But I think first of all, I'd like to understand the timeline and to see where we fit into that to hit the 22-23 budget scenario. The point I was trying to make earlier on was that Sidmouth Town Council, you know, spends 20,000 a year on its grants. We spend 22,000 on the whole district. I know it's not necessarily comparing apples and apples here, but it gives me some perspective. And 20k, frankly, here is it's very difficult to spend that, I would have thought, particularly well and wisely. And we're always just trying to sort of give little bits out here and there. The other point I just wanted, so I would very much want to see some more money, but then I take your point, Chair, about where do we get it from, frankly, not just in the short term, but in the longer term. And the other point I was going to make is, yes, this bit about, and I should declare, I'm district councillor that includes Sidbury, and so I live in Sidbury as well. And here we are, we come under Sidmouth Town Council, but we are a village in our own right. And greatest respect to Sidmouth Town Council, who is very good, which is very good at trying to be inclusive with all of its relevant parts. We, you know, because we're a village on our own, we're not in the hub of Sidmouth and Sidford, if you like, then we feel as if we're on our own, and therefore we don't, perhaps, we would say we don't get as good a bite of the cherry as maybe, say, I don't know, West Hill, just picking on a, you know, somewhere else. So the whole idea of whether or not we should be expanding or changing the rules to allow places like Sidbury to operate more equitably, of course I would support that, wouldn't I? So and maybe that's an interest I need to declare. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Yes, it feels to me like that's a little bit of an anomaly, because you know, West Hill was part of Ottery until 2017, and therefore wouldn't have been able to apply, or its groups wouldn't have been able to apply under this scheme. But now we're a separate entity, we can. So that's kind of, you know, I think that needs looking at. I think with the we just need to check that this group can meet, you know, can we meet informally to discuss things? I would hope that we can. And I think we need to be really clear about what information it is that we actually want to inform our decision. And I would guess that would be something that we would discuss in our first meeting, if that's what we all want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Okay. Can't see anybody else wishing to contribute to the debate at the moment. We haven't covered the part about the community pubs, whether they be included. I don't know if you want to cover that now before we perhaps come to making any sort of recommendation about how we take things forward. Councillor Parr, I saw you shaking your head at that point.
Meaning, no, we haven't got on to that.
Okay.
I think we had thought we were discussing number one.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify it so we're all clear before we move on. Okay, does anybody wish to make a proposal then in connection with a way forward in connection with part one of this? Councillor Pook.
Yeah, this group forms an informal group of the panel to first of all set terms of reference for what we're trying to achieve and what data we require, and then to prepare a report which we can then put to Cabinet. And if someone else can put that in better words, Wendy or Debbie.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Pook. Councillor Key, I saw your
Yes,
hand raised.
I would second what Councillor Pook has said, because I think it's much better to keep it in-house rather than, for the initial part anyway, rather than sort of spread it over the whole council.
I think
Okay,
supporting that, this is a politically balanced group as well, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Thanks, Councillor Key.
Chair,
Councillor
can I?
Loudon.
Yes, sorry. I concur with what my colleagues have just said. I just wonder whether within that we ought to be referencing us trying to achieve an outcome in order to influence or to input into the 22-23 budget process. I just wonder whether we need that as a sort of target date.
Councillor Pook, would you accept that amendment?
Yeah, certainly. So we can have some sort of conclusion ready for September, October this year, so that it can be considered. But yeah, all these details can be written into a sort of a specification in our next informal meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Key, you also accept
Yes.
that amendment as well?
Fully support that, Chairman.
Wendy, I don't know if you've had a chance to write down what was just being put forward.
So, Chair, can I just clarify then that what members have proposed and seconded and added to is that you are effectively deferring this decision on item 1 at the moment, subject to further discussion, which will include data that needs to be obtained, including the timetable, but to ensure that that then dovetails into any budgetary considerations for 22/23.
Yep.
Is that the best summary of it?
It is.
I would say a deferral is probably a better option, because that then leaves it open for further discussion in whatever format that you feel, rather than having to worry about setting up any
Exactly.
groups.
Exactly. Well done, Debbie.
Thank you. You happy with that, Jeff, how it was worded?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, okay. Can we now go to a vote on this then? So,
Okay. So, Chair, if I may, so members of the forum, if you could just wave at me if you are in support of that proposal. And I have 6 hands, Chair, so that's carried unanimously for item 1 of that item. Thank you.
thank you very much. So if we could now then go on to discuss item 2 on there, was about the community pubs being included. Panel members, anybody which throws up? Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. As I indicated at the beginning of the meeting, I was involved, first of all, in a campaign to save our village pub. And as part of that, we set up a limited company, which went out to local residents, and we sold shares in the company in order to create a community pub. Excuse me. Sadly, we didn't quite reach the 200k that we were seeking to raise, but it could have been a situation where we had created a community-run pub, which then would have needed not only the income from the pub, but maybe reliant on some grant funding from various places, which we were obviously looking at the time. And it seems to me there's a bit of an anomaly. You can have a village, according to what's in Jamie's report, you can have a village shop which can apply, but you can't have the village pub which can apply. And, you know, yes, they do 2 different things, but they're also key parts of the community. So I don't know whether this is something that we put into the review that we've just agreed, or alternatively, and I know, you know, I think we've only got one, and we may not, I don't know whether we've still got that particular one pub in the district. So it's, you know, it's not necessarily going to be inundated by bids from community pubs, but we either agree, in my view, to include them, and we look at whether there are other organisations that fall outside of our remit, or we put it into our broader review, and it may well be the latter.
Thanks, Councillor Loudon. Councillor Key and then Councillor Pook.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I mean, I think this is a very, very difficult situation, because you see, so many of the pubs are owned by the brewers, and therefore, I mean, they're covered. I have one community pub in my area, which is at Stockland, and I mean, they raised 235,000, I think it was, to actually open that and keep that going. We've had one at Yarcombe that has been trying to do the same. That has failed several times. But I mean, you have to be very, very careful if you're going to support the community pubs. Then surely, I mean, you've got to support all pubs, because I mean, they're all in the same situation at the moment. They are all fighting to exist, whether they are, because your brewery pubs are having to pay their rental, irrespective of whether they're open or not. I know that through experience from the pubs in my ward. Now, I mean, the community pubs, I mean, they normally sort of put a manager in, which is the one that Stockland has got, and they can do exactly the same thing, take away meals and such like. So I think it's very, very difficult situation as to which way we go on this. I mean, because it's all the pubs, irrespective of whether they're community pubs or they're brewer pubs, all have the same sort of problems. The only thing is the brewery pubs have still got to pay their rents, which are happening at the moment, and the community pubs, they can organise that between themselves. So I'm sort of very sceptical about sort of introducing into the scheme pubs. Thank you.
That's Councillor Key. Councillor Pook and then Councillor Parr.
I think it's something which should go into the consultation or the examination which this group will do, because community pubs, I think we'll have to look at the scoring mechanism and the things where we do it, because looking at the pub, we'll have to understand the community element of it, fully understand that. The monies involved in the community pub are going to be significantly more than the sort of the new kitchen for a village hall or something, and therefore we're going to have to fully understand the financial, the business plans of it. So I'd say, in principle, a community pub could be considered. However, the scoring mechanism and understanding the community element would have to be fully understood, and the business plan to see that our relatively small amount, because I can't really see us giving £200,000 to a pub, our relatively small amount isn't going to be small change or dregs of beer in the bottom, which are there one day and gone the next day and nothing left at all. So in principle, first of all, it should be in part of our larger discussion. In principle, yes, but there needs to be an awful lot more information behind a community pub than just a kitchen for a hall or something.
Thanks, Councillor Pook. Councillor Parr.
Yeah, entirely agree with what Councillor Pook said, and I have to say, I think it's quite clear in my mind that although many pubs are struggling, they are businesses, and we are not talking about that here. We are talking about pubs owned by the community, and as it says in the report, there's an example of the King's Arms in Stockland. We're not talking about the many pubs out there who are which are businesses. They are not community owned, even though they are probably important parts of the community, and they are desperately struggling. But we are not, this group, concerned with those, I don't think. So I support what Councillor Poot says. I think we should put this in to the study. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Parr. Was that a proposal from you, Councillor Pook? Is that a yes? I can't hear you.
I haven't done that for ages. Damn it. Yes.
I know I'd catch you out eventually today.
Seconded.
Thank you. Okay, can't see any further
Seconded,
raised
yeah.
hands. So if we can move to a vote on that, over to you, Wendy. If you're clear
Okay.
about what we're
Okay,
including.
Chair. So you're along the same lines as your the last proposal that you voted on. You're effectively deferring this decision on including community pubs until there's been some further research. You've had a further discussion on the topic. Okay. So members of the panel, if you could wave at me if you are in support of that proposal, please. And Chair, I see 6 hands, so that is supported unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Okay, that actually brings our meeting to an end, and I'd like to thank everyone, including any members of the public watching online, for taking part. However, can I just remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live. Until then, your comments will be live to the public.